All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Vinny. I'm a Senior Technical Support Advisor here at AnaJet, and I'll be hosting the webinar today. Today's webinar is going to be all about the new RIP software, AnaRIP 2.0, and all of the new features and improvements that we've made, and all the really great things that you're going to be able to do now with the RIP software so that you can more properly fine-tune your images and prepare them to print and get the results that you really want, the best quality prints that you can out of this direct-to-garment printer. So we're going to talk about the new firmware. We're going to talk about some of the things that the new RIP software does, including cost calculations, new options for functionality, a really great new addition called the TrueView, and we're going to actually do a live tutorial of all the different features that we have available with the new RIP software. So before we do that, I just want to mention that the AnaRIP software must be downloaded from the AnaJet website. Those of you who have already downloaded it, probably experimented with it a little bit, you're going to get to see in detail all the really great things you can do with this RIP software. Those of you who haven't downloaded it yet, you can just go to our website and download it there. Make sure that you are registered with us as an owner, as an owner of an AnaJet mPower. And then you can download the RIP software. Keep in mind that you do need to download the proper RIP software for your printer. So if you have an MP5, you'll want to download the MP5 RIP software. If you have a 10, you want to download the 10 RIP software. You can just log on to our website. There's a link below there as well that'll get you right to it. And go ahead and download that RIP software directly from us. Now keep in mind that this is the version 2.0 of the RIP software. We are making advancements and developments on the RIP software as well as the firmware on a pretty consistent basis. These are brand new machines and improvements are being made to them all the time. So keep an eye out for any new improvements to make sure that you always have the newest version of the RIP software and the newest version of the firmware to make sure that your printer is always current. So what we're going to do now is we're going to dive right in. I'm going to open up the RIP software, and we're going to go through it bit by bit and take a look at all of the new features that we have available and all of the new functions of the RIP software and all the great things that you'll be able to do with it now. So I'm going to go ahead and back out of this window here, and we're going to open up the RIP software. So those of you who have been using the RIP software may recognize a lot of the functions. It's still the same basic RIP software. There's just been added functions and properties to it. So we're just going to go through everything one by one and kind of give you a good explanation of what everything does and how you'll be able to use it to adjust your graphics specifically for printing and for getting the results out of your printer that you're really looking for. So the first thing that I'm going to do is bring in a graphic just by dragging and dropping it. You can also go to File and Open Design to bring in a graphic. So the first thing I'll be able to do here is choose my textile color, whatever color of garment I'm printing on. For now, we're just going to leave it white because we're going to talk about just setting up the color prints for a light garment. So you'll see right here it says Model mPower MP10 printer. Keep in mind once again that I said you want to make sure that you always have the proper RIP software for your printer. So if you have a 5, you want to have the 5 RIP. If you have a 10, you want to have the 10 RIP. Below that, we have the drop-down for the Platen size. Now originally you just had the main Platen size, the main table. But you'll see now that you have the options to choose the sleeve table and the youth table. So whichever table adapter you are using, you can pick the appropriate preview screen for that table. Now below that is the quality. Quality is defaulted to normal. Hasn't changed. You'll still want to leave your quality at normal for most graphics. A graphic like this, pretty complex, lots of color, light, shadow, lots of gradients. Something like this, you'll definitely want to print in normal for the quality. Now, normal you'll find you're going to be printing on at 90% of the time. Normal is going to print most of your graphics. You can choose speed mode if you're printing a really, really simple, basic graphic. If you're just printing text on a shirt or just a black logo on a white shirt or just a single color logo, you can probably get away with speed. For the most part, you're going to print with normal. Most graphics we want to print on a direct-to-garment printer tend to look a little more like this. We really want to get the most we can out of a direct-to-garment printer, so you'll see most of the sample graphics we at AnaJet use have a lot of different colors and gradients and different effects that you probably couldn't get through normal screen printing. So we really try to get the most out of our graphics. So most of our graphics tend to look a little more like this one here that we're using. So any graphic like that, we're going to print in normal. You have the ability to bump it up to fine. Fine really is reserved for very complex images. Really, the only time I've used fine when printing with the AnaRIP software is when I've been printing photographs of people. It just helps capture the skin tones really well, the subtle changes in color, and really brings out the detail and the complexity of the image. Now, keep in mind that quality really controls the speed at which the printer is printing. When you're in speed mode, obviously, that's going to be the fastest. Normal is a little bit slower because the printer is actually doing more passes, and fine is even slower still, and that's going to be the maximum number of passes that the printer does. And so it is going to slow down the printer a little bit when you're printing in fine mode, but you use it to really capture the detail in complex images like photographs of people. As I said, most of your graphics, 90% of the time, you're going to be printing with the quality of normal. So that's where we're going to have it right now. Below that is your variable dot range, basically your dot size, the actual size of the physical droplet that goes on the shirt. In previous editions of the RIP software, we had small, medium, and large. We have since adapted that to narrow and wide. So there's only two options right now, narrow and wide. Narrow is your default. Narrow is going to work with most things that you're printing, from T-shirts to handkerchiefs to thinner material, some of those burnout shirts, anything as far as a standard T-shirt or any type of maybe a thinner T-shirt, or really most garments that you're going to be printing, you're going to want to print in narrow for the quality. Wide is really reserved for things that are more absorbent, things that are a bit thicker, like a sweatshirt or a zip-up hoodie, or sweatpants, or anything that's really going to pull a lot of ink in. And a lot of our customers like to print golf towels or things of that nature, which are also very absorbent. Wide is really reserved for things like that that are more absorbent, that are really going to pull a lot of the ink in. You'll find, again, most of the time you're going to be printing in narrow. So normal narrow is the default for your color settings, and you're going to see that that really is going to be what you use the majority of the time. Now below that, you have your number of copies. You can enter however many copies that you are printing. Keep in mind that you can also enter the number of copies you're printing on the printer itself. So what I usually tend to do is I'll just send one copy, print it, and if it prints exactly the way I want it to, I'll then go to the control panel screen on the printer itself and enter for more copies. That's the way that I do it. You can do it that way, or you can put in the number of copies you want right here. Now, one thing I want to go a bit into detail about is bidirectional printing. Now, bidirectional printing simply means that the print head is printing as it moves from right to left and left to right. Every time it's passing over your shirt, every time it's passing over the graphic, it's laying down ink. This allows the printer to print very fast, but you may want to deselect bidirectional printing from time to time. There's a couple of situations where you'd want to, actually. The first and the most commonly known one is if you're printing something really small. So if this graphic was a bit smaller, and maybe it was just a pocket logo that I was printing on a shirt, and say it was no more than maybe 3 or 4 inches across, in that case, I'd want to disable bidirectional printing. The reason being is that the head is only passing over the part of the shirt that it's printing. And if you're printing something really small, especially if it has a lot of color, you can run the risk of laying down too much ink too fast. You can oversaturate your image. You can get bleeding. You can get blurriness. And you really want to avoid that. So when you're printing something small and you want to get a nice, crisp, sharp image, you'll want to unselect bidirectional printing. Now, another situation where you'd want to unselect that is when you're printing something that has very large areas of solid color. Now, I've gotten a lot of questions about this in tech support, so I wanted to address this specifically. If you're printing something, say an illustration or a logo that has very large areas of solid color with no gradient or change at all, you might notice that you get what we call tonal banding in those colors, where it's not really banding in the sense that ink's not going down. You're not seeing any gaps in the print, but you're seeing just kind of a slight shift in the tone every time the print head passes. That's because as it goes from right to left, the head is laying down the ink in a different order than when it's going from left to right. And you might see a shift in tone because of that. If you're noticing that, quick fix is just to deselect bidirectional printing. That way the head's always going in the same direction, the ink's always being laid down in the same order, and you don't see tonal shifts in your prints. So if that does come up and you have any questions about that, you could let us know at tech support, and we'll be able to help you, talk you through that. But usually unchecking bidirectional printing clears up any issues with tonal banding. Right now we're just going to go ahead and leave that checked because as default you're going to leave that checked the vast majority of the time. So normal, narrow, one copy, bidirectional printing. Now below that is the information for scaling. And as you may have seen just a second ago, I can adjust the size of my graphic just by clicking on one of the corners and using the mouse to scale it up or down. I can also type in a specific size. Now this size that you see right here is a percentage. So if I wanted this to be at 100%, I would just type in 100 and click Apply. The checkbox next to this is indicating that it will constrain the proportions. So it will scale it equally on the vertical and horizontal axis. Now you can deselect this. And when deselected, you can stretch or distort the image any way that you wish. You can make it wider or you can make it longer just by clicking and dragging. Or you can even enter the scaling information here and say I want it to be 125% on the vertical axis and 100% on the horizontal axis. Apply that. And that'll adjust it accordingly. For the time being, I think I'm just going to scale it up about 130% just to make it a little bit bigger. And that looks to be about the size that I would want to print that at. Below that, you can also type in the size in a specific measurement. So if I know for sure that I want to print this image 12 inches tall, I can type in that specific measurement, click Apply, and then it's going to scale that accordingly. Or if I wanted it 14 inches tall, or maybe if I wanted it 14 inches wide. Type that in, click Apply, and it'll scale it accordingly. I can adjust the position of my graphic just by clicking it and dragging it and placing it where I want. Or I could actually type in a position in the coordinates here. Or you could even simply click the center buttons to center it horizontally or center it vertically and put it right in the middle of your shirt. Normally what I like to do, since graphics tend to look better if they're a little bit more towards the top of the shirt, is I'll drag it a little bit more towards the top. Looks about right. And then I'll click center to center it from left to right. So now I have my graphic all sized up the way I want, I have it placed the way I want it, and I have my quality and my dot size checked. Now, next to that tab is the Color Adjustments tab, where I can adjust the brightness, contrast, and saturation of my image. So if I notice the image on this screen looks a little blown out, it looks a little brighter than I want it, I can turn the brightness down just a little bit. Maybe if I want to make sure these come out really bright and saturated, I can adjust the saturation, bring it up. And all of these tools are the same as they have been since the RIP software came out. One thing we have added is you can actually type in a number here for a specific brightness, contrast, or saturation. We're going to hold off on adjusting these for right now, though. I'm just going to reset them to 0 because you'll see that the improvements that we've made on adjusting the wide underbase are going to make a great deal of change in how your graphic prints. You're not really going to need to adjust the brightness, contrast, and saturation as much anymore. I've found in using this RIP software, a lot of it you're going to be able to fine-tune just by adjusting the wide underbase. So we'll come back to these in a little bit. But what I do want to talk about is the underbase and all of the adjustments and all the improvements that we've made in the wide underbase specifically. So of course, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to enable the white ink. Now, when I enable the white ink, the table is going to default to a black table to show me how the white underbase will look on a dark garment. And also, I'm going to be able now to adjust all of these white ink underbase steps. Now, the first thing that I want to show you, one really big improvement we've made and one really great tool now when you're preparing your dark garments is the different types of views. So now that I have the white ink enabled, I'm going to go up to the very top here and check out the views. Now, there's multiple different views. There's the color layer, the underbase layer, and the TrueView. So if I look at my color layer, this shows me how my colors are going to print. If I look at my underbase layer, this shows me how the white underbase is going to print on a black shirt. And if I adjust the color of the shirt, it's going to give me a live preview of how that white underbase is going to look on different colored garments. Now, another great feature that we've added is TrueView. TrueView is going to give me a live preview of what my shirt is actually going to look like once it's printed. It will show me the combination of the color of the garment, the white underbase, and the color layer to show me exactly what I'm going to get as far as output from this printer. So you'll notice that if I change the color of the garment that I'm printing from black to blue, it's going to show me how that affects the final print. You'll see that the graphic has a bit more of a bluish tint now because it's on a blue shirt. And you'll notice that if I print it on a red shirt, same thing. Now, if I turn off the white underbase, it's going to show me how it would look if I just printed those colors on the garment. So if I wanted to see what this graphic would look like on a red garment without a white underbase, I don't have to print it to find out now. I can uncheck white ink, throw the graphic on a red shirt, and this is what that graphic would look like on a red shirt without a white underbase. But if we were printing on a lighter color, maybe like a light yellow, you can see that for this particular graphic, I probably wouldn't need a white underbase. So now if you're not sure, you can actually check the live preview in the TrueView mode and see how your colors will look on the garment with a white underbase enabled or without a white underbase enabled. Now, you can also do combined views. So you can do the color view in the underbase. You can see the underbase in the TrueView, or you can even see all three. So right now what I'm looking at is my color path at the settings that it's currently at, my white underbase at its current settings, and the TrueView, which is the final view of what everything is going to look like when it prints. So what we're looking at in this far right screen here is the black shirt, the white underbase, and the colors all combined to show us what the print results are going to look like. And you'll see now, as I make certain adjustments, these previews will change. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to bump up the color contrast for the white underbase a little bit, because I usually like it a little bit more towards the top. So we're going to put it at 80. You'll see when we put it at 80, the white, which is going to give us brighter colors. And the preview reflects that. So the live preview changes as you make the adjustments, so you finally have a really good visual representation of what your print is going to look like. So I can also adjust the opacity contrast. Since this graphic kind of fades out a little bit, I can fine-tune that. And of course, I can adjust the choke. And as always, the purpose of the choke is to bring in the white underbase so that it doesn't expand beyond the color path. When you print white ink on a shirt, it has a tendency to expand. And without the choke, you might see a thin white outline around some of your prints. Turning the choke up to about 1 or 2 just brings the white ink in a little bit so that as it prints, it doesn't expand beyond the white. So I'm going to leave my choke at 1. Have my color contrast where I want it. Now, here's where I want to talk about a huge development in the RIP software and something that is a really great leap forward from not only from our previous RIP software, but from any RIP software in existence. And this is one of the new features that really makes this the most advanced RIP software on the market. Now, I've gotten a lot of questions in tech support about printing red on dark shirts. The problem is content-based sees red as a dark color. And a lot of the times when you're printing red, you want red to be bright and intense and vivid and vibrant. And you don't necessarily want a dull red on your dark shirts. So even though content-based puts more white ink under the light colors and less white ink under the dark colors, it still tends to put less white under the red than you'd want it to because it's seeing red as a dark color. What we've done to counteract that is we have this drop-down menu now where you can actually select specific colors in your graphic and adjust how much white you want to go under them. So if I do have red in my graphic and I want this red to come out nice and bright, I just got to select red in the drop-down menu and turn up the white underneath the red. And you'll see now the red's coming out a lot brighter. Now maybe the blues are coming out a little bit too dark too. I can go down and select the blues and bump those up a little bit. And now I have a nice bright blue. So you can see how you can actually fine-tune how much white ink is going down under each specific color. And you can even type in a setting to adjust how much white goes down under your magentas, under your reds, under your cyans, just so that you can actually fine-tune how much white goes down and where it goes. So you can really fine-tune that graphic and you can really get the exact print that you're looking for. So we still recommend as much as possible printing with content-based check. Because when you print content-based check, the first thing you're doing is saving white ink, which saves you money. Because it puts more white ink down under the lighter areas of the graphic and less white ink under the darker areas. All of these dark colors don't necessarily need a lot of white under them. In fact, they look better without a lot of white under them. So you're saving money, you're saving white ink, which saves money. You're getting a better variance in color by allowing your darker colors to be dark, and you're getting a softer feeling print because you don't have a solid white underbase under the shirt. Now you do still have the option of unchecking content base, and you'll see that as I uncheck it, the preview changes again. My white underbase becomes solid, and the colors in my TrueView are adjusted now. They're all a lot brighter because they have a solid white underbase under them. But we recommend printing with content base selected as much as possible because you're saving white ink, you're saving money, and you're getting a better color variance. So now that you have content-based checked, you can actually go through and adjust how much white is going down beneath each color to really fine-tune that graphic. Now, a lot of people are going to be tempted to just go through all of them and bump the white ink as much as they can. But really doing that kind of defeats the purpose of printing a content-based white underbase, because by the time you're done, you're pretty much just printing solid white under everything. And it's really not necessary to put that much white under your entire graphic. So what I usually do is I'll just check the white underbase, turn the color contrast up where I want it, usually at about 75 or so, and then I'll just go through and fine-tune each one. And the colors that are coming out a little bit too dark, the ones that I think could be a little bit brighter, particularly the reds in a lot of situations, you want to just bump those up a little bit. But you don't want to go overboard and turn the white underbase up under everything, because at that point you're basically printing a non-content-based garment anyway. So it kind of defeats the purpose of content-based. Now that we've discussed all of this, I want to direct your attention to just the area above it where we talk about the quality and the variable dot range. This works the same as it does in the print settings for your color path. Quality is the speed at which the printer prints. The variable dot range is the size of the physical drop that's going on the garment. You'll notice now with the white underbase that we have defaulted the quality to fine. Your white underbase just prints a lot better in fine mode. The passes that the printhead makes are smaller, they're closer together, and there's more of them, and it just allows you to get a more even, more solid white. I get this question a lot in tech support, and usually when someone calls in and they're getting banding in the white underbase, we have them bump it up to fine, and that fixes it immediately. We say in training when you're printing a white underbase to bump it up to fine. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and just made fine the default, because that's just going to allow your white underbase to print so much better. And it's just one less thing that you have. Results. Now we also do have an option to print the white underbase only. Now this is another question that we've gotten quite a bit here at AnaJet in tech support. What do I do if I want to just print white? And some of you may have graphics that are just white lettering on a dark shirt, or a just white logo on a dark shirt, or you just want to print a white image on a dark shirt. Well, now all you need to do is enable the white ink, check print underbase only, and the only thing that's going to print now is the white. So there's no need to cancel the color path. There's no need to adjust the graphics so that it's just white. You can go ahead and just select content-based and print underbase, or I'm sorry, enable white ink and print underbase only, and you're just going to print the white ink. Now going over to preferences, we have the display unit, which you can change from inches to centimeters to points to millimeters. Keep in mind that AnaJet printers are sold in, I believe, over 70 countries now throughout the world. So we do have the option to adjust the measurements of the grid. Default is inches, but you can change it to centimeters, points, or millimeters, whichever you're more comfortable with. You can also adjust your grid size. Default is 1 inch by 1 inch, but you could just as easily make it 2 inch by 2 inches, or whatever you're more comfortable with. You can even check to not display the grid or the rulers and just clear all that out so you're just looking at your graphic. Now below that is something that a lot of you have been asking us about, and that's the ink cost calculator. So what you need to do to figure out the cost of your graphic is first obviously bring in a graphic and adjust all of your settings. So I'm going to go back to the settings that I had this set before, where I was just on the default for quality and variable dot range, bidirectional printing. I had it sized the way I want it. These we left alone. I think I might want to turn the saturation up just a little bit, maybe to get me a little bit of enhancement on my color there. The underbase is where we want it. I have the white bumped up where I need it. I have content base checked. Now that I have all of that done, you can go ahead and select to print to file so that it can rip the image. And keep in mind that an image needs to be in the machine and, or I'm sorry, in the software and ripped before you can get an estimate on the ink cost. You need to bring the graphic in, adjust all of your settings accordingly, and rip the file, and then the ink cost estimator will tell you in dollars and cents how much that particular garment is going to cost you to print. So I know that's another feature that everyone's been asking about. Now, another thing specifically that our software engineer wanted me to mention just really quick is instead of selecting the buttons, clicking Print or Print to File, you can also go up to File and select Print to File or Print. And you can even use the keyboard, either Control-P to print or Control-F to print to file. So keep in mind that you can do that multiple different ways there. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this now and catch us back up to the slideshow. So again, just a kind of a review of some of the features that are available now with the current RIP software. Big one is that ink cost estimation calculator. This will let you know how much ink is used for your graphic and the cost in dollars and cents for each print. This helps making pricing even easier. It allows you to know what you should charge for your jobs. It has canvas scrolling, which allows faster print processes. Basically, this just allows the printer to skip over negative space in a graphic. And we have an enhanced preview screen, which, as you saw, is a live preview. And you can use the TrueView to show exactly how that's going to print on the graphic, on the shirt, and a combination of how the color path, or I'm sorry, the white underbase is going to affect the color path, and how the color of the garment is going to affect both the white and the colors you're printing. So now you have a live preview. You can see exactly how everything is going to look. Just a quick review of some of the firmware updates that have come out. Now, if you haven't already done so, you want to make sure that you download the latest version of the firmware as well. Also version 2.0. And the newest versions of the firmware will allow you to manually circulate your ink. There's enhancements to the auto circulation, additional diagnostic features, something that's going to be coming up in the future implementation of Ethernet interface, and the delete option to remove corrupt files. So I wanted to make sure that we left plenty of time for questions so that I could address all your questions directly in regards to the new RIP software. So I'm going to go ahead and address those questions now. Please type any questions that you have in the chat box that you have available there. Please keep all questions related to the RIP software specifically. Any other questions that you might have, feel free to direct those to tech support. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look here, and I'm going to answer these questions one at a time here. Okay. The first question is in regards to the opacity contrast. And let me go ahead and explain that just a little bit further. Let me bring up the RIP software again really quick. So opacity contrast is in the Underbase settings. And opacity contrast is really dependent on the image itself. And it only needs to be adjusted for certain images. The opacity contrast really adjusts transparent fades around the edge of an image. So if your image is just a solid graphic, just a solid logo or a solid picture or a photo, something with very definite edges, a fine line on the end, you're really not going to need to make any adjustments to the opacity contrast. It has no effect on graphics like that. But graphics like this, where there's a little bit of a glow around the edge, or graphics that have a shadow around them, anything that has a transparent gradient on the edge, where the graphic gradually fades to nothing rather than having a hard, definite end, that's where you'll adjust the opacity contrast. And adjusting the opacity contrast really just fine-tunes that edge so that you can have more or less of it depending on the look that you're going for. So if you want to adjust just how subtly or how prominent that fade is of the graphic fading to the garment, that's when you adjust the opacity contrast. And then there's a couple of questions about lining not coming out very solid. Generally, if your whiting doesn't match the way that it looks in the preview, if your preview is showing you that you have a good solid white, but on your garment it's not coming out very, very solid, there's a couple of things we need to look at. The biggest one is pretreatment, and you also need to look into making sure that you're getting a good white nozzle check. So questions about white ink and getting a good white ink print out of your garment, that's really a question that you should contact tech support about. As long as your white ink looks good here on your shirt, on your preview, if it doesn't match how it looks in the preview on the shirt, it's probably either an ink flow issue or a pretreatment issue. I have a few questions here about errors that people are getting when they are installing their RIP software. Anytime you're getting an error, a communication error or anything like that when installing the RIP software, that's something you'll want to contact tech support about. There are updates you may need to do to your software depending on which version of Windows you are running. Also, certain antivirus software has an adverse reaction to our RIP software, and it may need to be temporarily disabled. But if you contact tech support about that, we can help you get everything installed properly. And then for specific colors, and if that information is saved. And indeed it is. So if I wanted to actually bump up the green and put more white ink under the green and just bring that up, that information is now saved. So that if I go to my magentas and make an adjustment there, if I come back to the greens, you'll see that the white is still where it should be. And you'll see in the previews that the white is still enhanced in the green. So once you make that adjustment, it's saved. You can, however, click the reset button, and that takes you right back to standard default for everything. So I'm getting a few more questions about the ink cost calculator, and let me clarify that up a little bit. So what you want to do, bring in your image, adjust all of the settings accordingly, adjust how you want your image to print, and then you want to put in the cost of your cartridges. And a couple of you are asking if you put in the cost of one cartridge or all of them. And you're just going to put in the cost of the one. So color ink costs, we're going to put in 59. White ink costs, we're going to put in 69. And we're going to click Apply. Then we're going to go ahead and rip the file. And you'll see right here in the actual queue itself, if I can bring that up on my screen here, There it goes. Sorry, that screen wasn't popping up on your view there. You'll see on the screen here at the far right, it actually has the information for the cost per shirt. So the cost to print this graphic the way we have it right now in ink is $1.06. So let me demonstrate that again really quick because it looks like that window wasn't opening up properly, and I apologize about that. So the first thing you want to do is you want to bring your graphic in. You want to adjust all your settings just the way that you want them to get the print that you're looking for. You want to input your color cost and your white ink cost, and that's per cartridge. So for color costs, you'll put $59 because our color ink cartridges cost $59. Your white ink cost, you'll put $69 because that's what the cartridges cost for the white ink. You'll click Apply, and then you'll click Print or Print to File. Actually rip it. The file does need to be ripped to calculate the cost. Once it's ripped, your queue menu should open up. And on the far right-hand side of your queue menu, it'll say cost, and it'll tell you in dollars and cents how much that shirt costs to print. And I have a customer who's asking about a specific charge for a garment they're printing. They're printing a 7-inch, mostly red, and they have the white underbase set at 80, and the RIP is showing the cost as 13 cents. And they're asking if that's accurate. And yes, that is actually the RIP software has been tested and retested extensively to make sure that it's as accurate as it possibly can be. And printing a graphic that's only 2 inches high, yeah, that sounds about right to me. And yes, this is a total cost. It's not just the cost in your color ink. It's the cost for both. It's the total cost in ink per shirt. And yeah, just a little bit of clarification once again. If your image does look as good as it does on the TrueView, particularly if your white underbase doesn't look as good as it looks in the preview of the white underbase, maybe if you got a nice solid white on your screen, but when you print that image you're getting kind of a dingy light gray, or your white's coming out really faint and it doesn't look the way it looks in your preview, that's most likely a pretreatment issue. And also it might be separation. Make sure that you guys are shaking your white cartridges every couple of but it's most likely a pretreatment issue. If this issue arises, give us a call on tech support and we'll help you out with that. And let me see here if there's any further questions on the RIP software itself. And just one more quick question. Someone was asking if this RIP software is currently available. Yes, it is. It was released on Monday of this week, so you can, if you haven't already done so, you can go ahead and download it right now and start working with it. And of course, tech support will be available till 6 p.m. Pacific time to answer any questions that you have about this webinar or the RIP software in general. And we are doing this same webinar again on Monday, and they are going to be recorded and they'll be on our website so that you can watch them later if you need a refresher or if you need to be reminded of something. And as always, any questions that you have about the RIP software, any questions that you have in general, feel free to contact tech support. We're always here to help. You can call direct at 714-668-6000. or you can also email us at tech1@anajet.com, TECH and then the number 1, anajet.com. And thank you all again very much for attending the training today. And just let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.